Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome James Whiting, the CEO of Malaria No More UK.
Thanks so much, everybody. It's fantastic to see so many energetic people at the end of what must be, well, I don't know, maybe I don't know if it's the wine or no doubt the orange juice or something in the orange juice or whatever, but you're all looking really well for the end of the conference. And even Sarah over there, who I think has organised 25 of these events in a row. So a lot of sympathy there. Thank you so much, Mark and ConservativeHome, for doing this with us. It's incredibly important that we are able to engage with you all and to thank you all, and I'll come on to a bit more about why. But let me just start by saying that fighting malaria is not simple. I mean, that might sound like a very obvious statement, but actually compared to fighting COVID, it really is considerably more complex. It's been around since the time of the dinosaurs. It's literally been around for millions of years. But as I'm going to explain, we actually have the chance to end it within 2 or 3 decades. The key weapons for fighting malaria are bed nets, insecticides, treatment, diagnostics, and now vaccines, and even gene-drive technology. The world leaders in all of those things are in this room tonight. So please try and get around and meet them. Maybe if they could put their hands up, and then you'll see who they are. So if you're here under the pretext of the malaria campaign, please put your hand up. David over there, come on, Neil, that's it. Thank you. Because they really are worth talking to. These are the people that are leading the fight against malaria. This report that we've done, please do grab a copy. It's actually quite readable as reports go. Not that long. I think it's only about 10 pages. So do please grab a copy. It really shows the extraordinary impact of British innovation on malaria. So what are the next steps for the UK? Well, as the film said, they are to keep up the investment in this life-changing research and development. But it's also critically next year, the year when the Global Fund is replenished by all the countries of the world, all the donor countries of the world. And the UK has been a leading funder of the Global Fund over the last 20 years. The Global Fund is the incredible strategic clearinghouse that gets all these innovations out to the millions of people that need them. So these two things go together just like that. It has saved over 44 million lives since it was founded by Britain and others in 2002. I think its only rival as a body that has saved lives must be Gavi, the vaccines organisation. It's absolutely extraordinary. But over the last decade, Conservative governments have recognised the effectiveness of this campaign. And they've made the UK the world's second leading donor, alongside the US, in lockstep. The malaria campaign, when people think about the donors to the malaria campaign, they think about the United States and they think about Britain. If you were to go to Africa or Asia Pacific or all over the world and you were to talk to people that are involved in the malaria campaign or around it, they would talk about America and Britain as the donors and the people that provide the expertise. And so much so that the UK has been giving £500 million a year to the malaria campaign over the last 5 years. So that was up from about £100 million a year in 2010. That's what Conservative governments have done. And I think it's because they've seen how effective this is and how important it is for Britain. Now, in 2021, something has really changed. Of course it has. And there's unprecedented public backing for the use of British science on the global stage. I think it's obvious, COVID has brought home to us the link between health and wealth. In a recent opinion poll, and I do find this staggering, even though obviously, I want to believe it, but in a recent opinion poll, 54% of British people saw science and medicine as the UK's most valuable contribution to the world. Compared to, and I'm sorry to say this, 6% for arts and culture, 5% for sport and leisure, and 11% for manufacturing and engineering. Now, we must know that 2 years ago that would not have been the same result. So that is an extraordinary change in the public feeling about the UK on the global stage. What an opportunity for the UK to seize. As I say, malaria has been on this planet for millions of years, but this government is taking it towards eradication. That is what was also in the manifesto in 2019, to lead the way towards eradication. You have the opportunity, and you already have started saving millions of lives, 7 million since 2000. Let's see this through to the end. What a legacy to future generations. I am delighted now to hand over to James Sunderland MP, who's Vice Chair of the APPG for Malaria and NTDs. I can tell you, and Jeremy Lefroy's here, who used to be the chair, and I want to say a big thank you to Jeremy. He's been an extraordinary champion for the malaria campaign for the last decade. But a huge welcome to James, because we couldn't get anywhere near what we're doing without that core support in Parliament. So, James.
Thanks, team. Back in 2003, I was a young major serving in Sierra Leone. About 9 months into the tour, I was asked to go up country to cause some mischief. And when I was up there with a guy called Colonel John Petrie, the radio breathed life in the back of the Land Rover, and we were told to go up to the Kailan salient, up to the Liberian border, to oversee a surrender. And for those who recall African history at that time, civil war in Liberia, pretty brutal. And what was happening is that members of the Liberian army were pressed hard against the border and were coming into Sierra Leone. Big refugee crisis. It was a complete nightmare. So I went up to the Kailan salient. We dealt with these refugees, about 500 of them. We processed their weapons, gave them food. They were in an appalling state, and went to bed. And when I woke up in the morning, I got out of my mosquito net and I noticed 2 mosquito bites on my left arm. Thinking nothing of it at all, because at that point I was on Lariam, or I thought I was. Got back to Sierra Leone, got back to Freetown, and about 2 days later, got out of bed in the morning and I felt quite queasy. And the next thing I know, 4 days later, I woke up out of a coma, having had malaria. So I had malaria, Vivax malaria. For those who understand malaria, there's 3 main kinds. There's common malaria, which is pretty horrible because you don't get rid of it. There's cerebral malaria, pretty horrible, it can kill you. And I had Vivax malaria, which can also kill you. It almost killed me, so thank God I lived to tell the day. But I was pumped full of a drug called artesunate in the Jordanian UN hospital in Freetown. It saved my life. So I'm here today as a big champion for this wonderful cause. And I just want to say a few things about what we're doing at the moment as a government. The fact today is that the government is supporting this fantastic initiative and fantastic drive. We have the best sciences in the world in the UK. What's been achieved with the vaccine so far is incredible, and we've got to roll it out. So the commitment currently is 1.4 billion over the next 2 years. It's significant. I was in 2 minds about the 0.7% overseas development vote. I came very close to voting against the government. I'm glad I didn't. But I was absolutely clear at the time that by reducing that commitment from 0.7% to 0.5, it has to come with 2 guarantees. First of all, that we do a complete audit of where the money goes. That's the first thing. Who knows where these huge sums of money are going? And secondly, we must put it back as soon as we possibly can, when fiscal conditions allow. So in brief for me, it's really important that although the overseas development has reduced fiscally and will reduce, it's important in my view that the money we spend on malaria and NTDs must not reduce within that headroom. It must be continuous. And what we must do is actually invest more to make sure that this vaccine gets rolled out. For me, ODA is quite simple. We can invest in all sorts of things. We can invest in sanitation. We can invest in infrastructure, roads, hospitals. It's all really important stuff. But what we must be investing in first and foremost is in things that keep people alive. And in 2019 alone, an estimated 409,000 people died worldwide of malaria. And that's a huge number. But if you consider that beyond that, we've got millions and millions of people suffering every day with malaria, and I've seen it in Africa, it's debilitating. people with common malaria, they don't get rid of it. They can't shake it off. It's like an appalling cold all day, every day. It's pretty grim. And in the wet season in particular in West Africa, it is quite vile. What you see there, people dying on the streets of malaria. It is an absolute killer. So to wrap up very quickly, I support this campaign. It is essential that we invest more in the fight against malaria and other NTDs. I commend the scientists in the room who are driving this, absolute admiration. This is about keeping people alive. Thank you.
Thank you so much, James, for that and for your personal experience of this dreadful disease. Now, our title, ladies and gentlemen, begins with the words science superpower. And to have a science superpower, you need a science dynamo. And I'm pleased to say that we've got him here with us this evening, the Minister for Science, George Freeman. He'll be familiar to all of you simply by his sheer energy and interest and focus on all these issues. Before he was the minister, now he is the minister. He's there in the brief, bringing exactly those qualities to it. So, George, thank you for joining us. The stage is yours.
Mark, thank you. And thank you to ConHome for hosting this. I think you said it's the last of your conference fringe programme. A few anniversaries. For me, this is the 16th speaking event in 2.5 days, and it's not an accident. I wanted to come to this. I think it's very fitting as we close and start a party night and enjoy all the privileges of our prosperous Western lifestyle, just to remember that around the world tonight there are millions and millions of people suffering from this disease, and that, to me, conservatism is about making a place called home, and a confident home can then be a confident nation, and the key to that ODA budget is to grow the economy. Remember, it's a percentage of the economy, so the key is to turbocharge the growth. So I wanted to come tonight to signal my support for this campaign for various reasons, various anniversaries. This is my 30th conference. I'm on my 8th Conservative leader. It was 8 years ago, I think, that I first came to see Adrian and the team at the Jenner Institute in Oxford with John Bell. And by the way, just a reminder that sometimes this party debates industrial strategy and changes the term and wonders whether it's doing it or not. In 2010-11, when Steve and I and Sally Davis and various others and John Bell got together, and I was lucky enough to have in David Cameron somebody who got it, and we decided to set out a 10-year groundbreaking life science strategy. It's laid the foundation for a phenomenal period of growth led by companies and scientists. But strategy works, and in my new role as Minister for Science and Innovation, I think my big goal is to make sure that we lay an uncontestable, non-partisan strategy for UK science and innovation, that whoever forms the next government, that whoever the next 8 Prime Ministers are, they stick to it. And I remember going, Adrian, meeting you and going down to Porton Down when I was Minister for Life Science. I got a panic phone call from the then MP saying, help, Public Health England are moving from Porton Down, main employer, all the white shirts are going to Harlow, and I'm left with tumbleweed. And I said, are you left with tumbleweed? He said, yeah. So I went down to have a look, and it was a bit tumbleweedy and a bit sort of 1960s NBC and sort of Nissan Hut's classic British science campus. And I said, well, who's in there? And he said, well, I'm not sure. And we went down, and I found a company, no white shirts, everyone in blue overalls, and I found a great British vaccine manufacturing business. And there was no corporate sort of schmooze, because they weren't expecting me. And eventually I asked to see the CEO. They said, we don't have a CEO, we have an MD who was on the plant. And he made me a cup of tea himself with a spoon. And I said, so who are you? What do you guys do? And it turns out it's only a vaccine manufacturing company. And I said, well, do you have many clients? He said, yeah, we've got 120 million turnover. And I said, are you profitable? He said, well, yeah, I think so. I said, well, where does the profit go? He said, we make about 15, 20 million a year. It goes to Public Health England. I said, well, they're obviously not reinvesting it in this plant, because... and I went back to George Osborne and said, can you do me a favour? Can I take back the 15 million that Public Health England spend on coffee? I mean, it was a rounding error in the Public Health England budget. Recapitalise that company, and let's build a great British vaccines manufacturing business, and let's go one further and turn Porton Down into a biosecurity campus, link it to the Jenner Institute, and get WHO and Gates Foundation and Wellcome and build something global that could be a real centre of excellence, and we could replace the Nissan huts with somewhere that we could be a global beacon. And, you know, if global science superpower means anything, here's what it means to me. And I framed my agenda around two projects, really, two prime ministerial straplines: science superpower and innovation nation. The science superpower bit, what does that mean? Well, it means to me, firstly, continuing to invest in world-class science. And people say to me, you know, is that just in the golden triangle? No, but it is golden for a reason. It is the shining jewel in the crown. The challenge is, just like the City of London, to spread its genius all around the country. But first, baseline investment in core excellence of science. Second, global inward investment. The way we're going to get the economy growing is to pull in, for every pound of public spending, every pound we take off taxpayers, we need to turbocharge that with inward investment, global, industrial, large-scale inward investment. Thirdly, science superpower means to me using that science to tackle global challenges, like the global grand challenge of feeding the world. Population growth, we need to double food production by 2050 on the same land area with half as much water and energy. Massive global grand challenge. Can anyone think of a country that's got a historic expertise in agricultural science, in plant genomics, that could begin to generate a new era of drought-resistant crops, disease-resistant crops? We're sitting on a gold mine. So I think science superpower also means using that science to help tackle global challenges. Net zero is going to mean we're all going to have to lose a bit of weight, like I have since that ugly photograph was taken. But we're all going to have to, you know, cycle a bit, walk a bit. But we're going to have to develop some technology as well. So it also means applying our science for the great challenges of tomorrow. And it also means soft power. And I think, to your point, to me, this year, you've seen a sort of Olympiad moment. I've never seen the British public get science more. The cheers at Wimbledon when the whole place stood and applauded Sarah Gilbert. I mean, it's a fantastic moment. For those of us who get science and have often lamented why more people don't, to see the British public get it, but also to see business get it. When I was Minister for Life Science, people would say, oh, that sounds very complicated. What's that? And I'd say it's about getting our health innovation ecosystem working together and getting people to realise that the health of a nation is fundamentally linked to the wealth of a nation, and to get BEIS and DH working together and to recognise that the NHS will never pay the top dollar, nor should it. We should be using the NHS as a research engine and getting companies here. And they say, oh, that sounds terribly technical. They don't think it's technical now. And companies across the world have realised the cost of disease and the value of health. This is an amazing moment for us to harness that. And I think the Prime Minister gets it. And my job is to turn that phrase into something real. And the Innovation Nation bit is to make sure that that which we all get goes out from the Golden Triangle, and people in Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales, in the windy backwaters of mid-Norfolk, and those places that have felt like the shiny technologies of tomorrow aren't changing their life chances, are, by building clusters of science and technology all around the country. And I just close with this, that 35 years ago I hitchhiked from Lake Turkana on the border of Kenya and Sudan down to Cape Town. And you see some extraordinary landscapes, you meet the most amazing people. You're much safer in places that people warn you you'll be unsafe, and you're less safe in places people tell you you will be. And the thing that went with me all the way was malaria. In every village that I put my tent up, in every place that generous people would put me in a truck that I didn't think had any room, and people carrying children and babies beside every street and road, and there are children dying of malaria. And it's this sort of constant heartbeat of tragedy. But it's also holding back the potential of people. It's traumatizing whole families and communities. It's like a sort of virus in the software drive of the African innovation economy. It's just draining energy out. And it's holding back global development. And therefore it's affecting the prosperity of the globe, and therefore it's also affecting our security, because in the end, the ability of those nations to develop is our best guarantee of security. So to me, this fits absolutely foursquare in the science superpower framework. If this science superpower doesn't mean this, I don't know what it does mean. And it's a brilliant video. I'll happily put it on my website and support it. And I just close by saying, in the end, government, I think, can make a difference. And if you look at the numbers, what is it, something like 450,000 people a year dying of malaria. But that's halved in 20 years. I mean, that's too many people, but it's halved in the 20 years since I've been coming to this conference. That's not bad. and pay tribute to successive governments and what are the 200 million people with the disease. And the progress that's being made, it's incremental, and the technologies, the science that you're doing here and the support internationally, we just got to keep going. And I'm not the Chancellor of the Exchequer, I don't know what the CSR is going to be, but somehow we need to continue to leverage the private funding, the public funding, and my real challenge is to grow the economy by making us a home to businesses that are not growing at 2% a year or 3% a year or 4%, which would outperform the UK economy pre-Brexit, but at 100, 200 and 300% a year, like the businesses I used to fund. If we're home to those companies, then 0.5% will be masses of money. And the key is to get us to that point quickly when we can then switch it back to 0.7. And that's the dream, to harness this science and innovation, to grow the economy quickly. And we'll do it by inspiring people by what our science can do. So I just want to pay tribute to this community, from the high science to the finance, to the advocacy, and to James. And I can't help but mention my great friend Jeremy Lefroy, because when I first arrived in Parliament, you know, there were 150 of us in 2010, all galloping down to the first fence in the Grand National. Liz Truss clearly out in front. I went off to the right-hand side and decided to specialise. And Jeremy's one of those people who just consistently does the decent thing and never seeks the limelight, and is just an absolute stalwart of the very best of parliamentary politics. And I think in his successor, we have a dynamo as well, and somebody who will fly the flag. So thank you to you both, and thank you to Malaria No More for what you do. And I can tell you have a very strong supporter, and I look forward to helping you.
Well, there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. It just falls to me to say 3 thank yous, one of which in particular I'd like to finish on. Firstly, to say a quick thank you to my colleagues Sarah Kumar and Charlotte Rogers and their events team, who've made all of these events possible. It's the kind of job where if it goes well, nobody notices. If it doesn't, everything explodes. So thank you both for all your work. Secondly, to say thank you to our speakers and to Malaria No More UK for partnering with us on this event. And finally, to do a minor Wimbledon centre court of our own, I think we should also finish with a great big thank you to the scientists who've joined us this evening for their great life-changing work. And the bar is open until 8:30. So.